Hello and welcome to another Brawl video. This week my supporters on Patreon voted for the Scarlet Witch as our commander, a 3-mana 2/3, saying instant and sorcery spells we cast with mana value 4 or greater cost X less to cast, where X is the Scarlet Witch's power. So our deck is going to have lots of expensive instants and sorceries that we're hoping to discount, and a few ways to increase the Scarlet Witch's power to get an even bigger discount on those expensive spells. So then if we take a look at our deck breakdown, I've split it up into a few different categories, starting with a bit of mana acceleration, couple ramp artifacts or ways to discount our spells, as well as a couple ritual effects which also synergize nicely with all the cards in the deck that care about casting instant and sorcery spells. Then we have our pump spells, often 1 and 2 mana, increasing the witch's power by 3, and some of these can also draw a card or exile the top card of our library that we get to play until the end of our next turn, so they also cantrip. And the Runechanter Spike is a very nice equipment in this deck, as it can statically increase a creature's power based on the number of instant and sorceries in our graveyard, as well as giving it first strike. And then we have all our creatures grouped into one category. These are the win conditions of the deck, and they also often help us generate additional mana when casting instant and sorcery spells, so they also make it easier to string together multiple spells in the same turn. And then we get to the meat of the deck, which are all the 4+ mana instant and sorceries that we're hoping to discount with a Scarlet Witch. A lot of these will draw cards, generate treasures, act as interaction, some removal, some sweeper effects, and some additional win conditions as well. And then finally, the miscellaneous section has a few more cards that can maybe help us interact early on before we deploy the Scarlet Witch, a few ways to protect it with a Redirect Lightning and Swiftfoot Boots, and then a few other enchantments that also pair well with all the instants and sorceries that we're trying to cast. So yeah, that's our deck in a nutshell. Now for the deep dive, starting with mana acceleration, we'll first go over some of our ritual effects. Strike it Rich just makes a treasure for 1 mana, can also flash it back. And then we have some actual rituals like Pyretic, 2 mana to make 3. Jeska's Will makes mana equal to the number of cards in the opponent's hand. And if we control our commander, we also get to exile the top 3 of our library that we get to play this turn. And then Seething Song is 3 mana to make 5, so it can also lead to some explosive starts, where we can now play the Scarlet Witch and immediately cast another 4 mana instant or sorcery afterwards. And then we've got some ramp artifacts with the Arcane Signet, Ruby Medallion discounting our red spells by 1, and then Tablet of Discovery has been amazing for these archetypes that want to cast some expensive instants and sorceries. And finally the Pyromancer's Goggles, another fun one that can copy whatever red spell we cast using its mana. Then we've got our pump spells, a couple cantrips here with the Ancestral Anger, drawing a card. We also have the Fists of Flame, can also get more power based on the number of cards we've drawn, while giving our creature Trample. And then Blazing Crescendo and Haste Magic are quite similar. Crescendo lets us cast a spell until the end of our next turn, whereas Haste Magic only until end of turn, but also gives our creature haste. We've got the Sazakab's Brew, which can discard and draw 2, but if we gift a fish, we can also give our creature 2 additional power, so that's also quite synergistic. And then we've got some more 1 mana pump spells giving 3 power, Reckless Charge also giving haste, can also flash it back. Titan Strength we sometimes want to cast in our upkeep to make use of the Scry 1 first. And then Wild Ride also giving haste, can also harmonize it out of the graveyard. And finally, we've got Runechanter Spike, as I discussed, as well as Mishra's Command, and X spells in general can also be very powerful if we can already increase the Witch's power first, because then we can sink additional mana into these, so then we can maybe give a creature additional power, can deal damage to creatures or planeswalkers, or maybe discard and draw some cards. Then we get to our creatures. The Runaway Steamkin can pick up additional counters when casting red spells, which can then turn into additional mana. Then Burgi, alongside the Vision and Scarlet Witch, both generate a red mana when casting any spell whatsoever. We've got Electro when casting instants and sorceries specifically, and also makes it so that our red mana doesn't go away, so also pairs well with the other creatures that can generate additional mana for us. The Artist makes a treasure whenever we enable Magecraft, and we do have a few ways to copy our spells in the deck. There's Ashling, which can first discard and draw, then deal 2 damage to each opposing creature and eventually make 4 red mana as well. Urabrask also, when casting instants and sorceries, makes a red and can eventually transform into a powerful saga. And then Thor, God of Thunder, can get back an instant or sorcery from our graveyard for a turn. And finally, the Dawning Archaic can also get a discount based on the number of instants and sorceries in graveyard, and then a huge 7/7 with Reach that can maybe get back a spell from our graveyard for free when it attacks. And then we get to our 4+ mana instants and sorceries, starting with a few Treasure Makers here. There's the Big Score, there's Pirate's Pillage, as well as Unexpected Windfall. This is the weakest one since it's double red to cast with a Scarlet Witch in play, so we cannot discount it down to a single red if we increase its power even further. Then we also have a Mind Collapse, which we can potentially cast for free if we're willing to sacrifice a mountain, dealing 5 to a creature or planeswalker. Then a Mystic's Mastery pairs well with some of our discard outlets, so we can get our more expensive spells in the graveyard and then cast them on the cheap, but it's also totally fine to cast for 2 mana with a Scarlet Witch out and get back some of our other spells for additional value, or maybe even overload it in the late game. The Might will deal 4 to an opponent while exiling the top card of our library that we get to play until the end of our next turn. Past in Flames giving all our instants and sorceries a flashback until end of turn, also as flashback itself. And then the Sorcerer's Scheme is another way to rebuy some of our instants or sorceries from the graveyard while generating a red mana. So with high enough power on the Scarlet Witch, this is basically free to cast. Then we've got Witchstalker Frenzy, which can also easily be cast for a single red to deal 5 to a creature. And then the Repeated Reverberation can be a lot of fun if we can pair it with another expensive spell in the same turn, copying it 2 additional times. The Volcanic Torrent with Cascade deals X damage to each creature and planeswalker your opponents control, where X is the number of spells we've cast this turn, so ideally we've cast a few more spells beforehand, but of course a spell we cascade into also contributes. And then at 5 mana we also have Season of the Bold, often going to exile the top cards that we get to play until the end of our next turn. The Immolating Gyre, another powerful sweeper, tracking the number of instants and sorceries already in our graveyard. Then Raphael's Technique is one of the few wheel effects on Arena in red, so we get to discard our hand and draw 7, of course especially powerful if we're close to empty-handed. Brass's Bounty can be a way to generate a ton of extra mana, making a treasure for every land we control. The Capstone is also great if we can ramp it out early, giving us that paradigm to cast additional spells each turn for free. Hit the Motherlode will discover into one of our spells while still leaving behind lots of tapped treasure tokens. Mascot Exhibition can potentially be cast for free if we get the Scarlet Witch to 7 power, making 3 different creature tokens for us. Explosive Welcome will deal 5 to one target, 3 to another, while also generating 3 red mana, so this can also potentially generate additional mana if we have enough power on our commander. And then Apex of Power is one of the more exciting ones, exiling the top 7 cards of our library. Until end of turn we can play spells from among them, and if we cast it from our hand we also get 10 red mana in this case. And then we've got a few more X spells, which can also be very powerful if we increase the Witch's power enough, although they can be a bit of a nombo with a cascade mechanic, so just be careful with that. But Crackle with Power, of course, a great finisher if we can sink a bunch of mana into it. And then the Shatterskull Smashing, a fine land, but also a solid removal spell. And then finally our miscellaneous section has a couple 1-mana burn spells, Chain Lightning and a Lightning Bolt, Flashback to maybe get back one of our more exciting instants and sorceries, then a Redirect Lightning can redirect a removal spell targeting our commander. We also have the Swiftfoot Boots for Hexproof and Haste, going for Swiftfoot Boots over Lightning Greaves since we do want to target our commander with our pump spells, so then Shroud from Lightning Greaves would be a bit of a nombo. Then Artist's Talent will help us discard and draw whenever casting a non-creature spell, can also level it up to give our non-creatures a 1-mana discount. Hex Magic is quite thematic, but also very powerful, as we get to exile the cards in our hand, draw that many cards, and we get to play the exiled cards until the end of our next turn, so we often still get to make use of most of them while having drawn a bunch of extra cards. And then we've got a few more powerful enchantments with Double Vision, copying the first instant and sorcery spell we cast each turn. Arcane Bombardment can exile additional spells from our graveyard when casting them. And Chandra, Hope's Beacon, can also double up on instants and sorceries we cast, while maybe making additional mana, finding additional instants and sorceries, or dealing damage. And then Pyrokinesis, another removal spell that can potentially be cast for free, dealing 4 damage divided as we choose among any number of target creatures, although we do have to pitch a red card from our hand in order to cast it for free, otherwise still realistic to hard cast, especially with a discount from Scarlet Witch. And then I kept the mana base pretty simple, 36 basic mountains. We've got Volakut to take advantage of them, as well as the Industrial Regency as another win condition and pay off for casting all those non-creature spells. And then a Library of Alexandria can also be very nice in your opening hand, since on turns 1 and 2 we're not often doing a whole lot, so then now at least we get to draw a few cards. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play, facing Jem Lightfoote. 4 mana, 3/3 Flying Vigilance, and then opponent's going to be playing at instant speed for the most part. So counter spells could be plentiful. This hand's okay. Try to get some of our creatures down, and then with Raphael's technique we can draw 7 again, and hopefully string together more stuff. Start with a tapped Regency. A Runechanter Spike is going to be more exciting once we cast a few more spells, but can be a nice way to statically increase Scarlet Witch's power. For now, Maestro. Do they have a Spell Snare, perhaps? A Brainstorm? Okay, so Maestro should resolve. They don't have an island in place, so don't need to worry about days just yet. So instead of going for Scarlet Witch, let's maybe start with Electro. Opponent surveils. Hit you for 2. Presumably our opponent has a counterspell in hand. But yeah, if the Scarlet Witch gets countered, then we can still replay her next turn. We get some damage in the meantime. And I'll wait to sneak the technique. Alright, Scarlet Witch resolves, but might be answered here by a downpour. Yeah, that's unfortunate, so now 2 of my creatures are shut down, turned into 1/1s. Now with the technique I can still maybe pick them back up, but then I'm also discarding them. Okay, so then we want to first play the Pike, and then attack and technique. Opponent with a Fairy Mastermind. Maestro does have Menace. Okay, I mean, I'm still gonna technique here, even though they'll get to draw an extra card of Mastermind now as well. Pick up Scarlet Witch, so we can maybe redeploy her later. And yeah, I guess it doesn't matter. For now I can put her in hand, so that if they counter the technique I can still recast her for 3. And our opponent had a Stifle for the Maestro trigger, but I'll still resolve the technique. And then now we should be able to put Scarlet Witch in the command zone. Mastermind lets them drop to 8. Alright, and now we've got a fresh hand. Opponent resolves their commander. And can immediately draw. They will have to discard to hand size. They did have a Settle the Wreckage in hand, so maybe that's what they were considering last turn. Discards an opt. So take my draw. A Lightning Bolt is a good one. So how do we want to begin? Could go Vision and Scarlet Witch. Into Arcane Signets. Into Lightning Bolts. Do they have an answer for 1 mana? A Daze can pay for that. Although they still have a mana up. So then instead of playing the Signet, I'll just Bolt. And they might have a way to protect and Jem Lightfoote. Force of Negation, so they had 2 free spells here. Okay. Can still attack for 3. And we resolved a pretty good creature. Opponent passes. And they're now gonna get lost after having drawn a card in the end step. That's too bad. Take my draw step, tablet's a good one. So going for Scarlet Witch and getting it countered would be kind of a big setback in terms of tempo. So maybe we start with tablets and see what's up. Opponent with an iceberg in response, exiling the Maestro. Tablet mills Ashling, which I can still cast. So I can go Signet plus Ashling. And then hopefully next turn we get to do some stuff. Opponent's gonna get to draw again. So I don't have high hopes for Scarlet Witch resolving, but I think it's still worth a try. Opponent's gonna remand. At least now it will only cost 3. And then I can still potentially cast some spells afterwards. A miscalculation, pay the 2. Scarlet Witch resolves, but now we're tapped out. Just attack with Ashling. Alright, let's see what other answers they have left. They are leaving the Mastermind on defense. Take my draw. Okay, I mean, we certainly have some powerful options here. I think we kick things off with Pirate's Pillage, discarding Seething Song. They will get to draw off Mastermind, but that was going to happen no matter what. Of course, Crackle could just be lethal here if it resolves. Although I'm still tempted to hang on to the Windfall instead. It is mandatory to discard and draw. So we don't get to just keep both cards. Could have been a reason to maybe explore first, maybe try and find a land and then discard it. Alright, opponent now with Aang to airbend something, but they are tapped out. And our opponent's going to airbend Ashling. Alright, I think that's going to work out fine. So now Crackle should just be lethal. Draw Haste Magic. And 2 lanes. So now I get to equip the Pike, discount my spells by 6 mana. So Crackle for 2 only costs double red. So we have to do a bit of math here. Can I do a Crackle for 4? Would normally cost 14 mana, minus 6 is 8. Yeah, should have just enough. One, 2, 3, 4. I have some remaining treasures as well. And that's a satisfying ending. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Hei Bai, Forest Guardian. Our hand is reasonable, especially if Scarlet Witch does not immediately get removed. So yeah, I'll keep. Don't think I'll be needing the Shadow Skull Smashing as a removal spell. Already have the Frenzy to answer Hei Bai. Opponent starts out with a Sanctum of Tranquil Light. So can try to tap out for Scarlet Witch. Opponent with now a Sterling Grove. So if they really want, they could also maybe tutor up an answer to my commander. But yeah, I'll try it. And Windfall is now basically free to cast. Sanctum Weaver is a good removal target. Although I guess with a Sterling Grove it now has Shroud. So that's not going to work. Alright, so where do we want to begin? I could Reckless Charge on Scarlet Witch to discount my spells even more. How does Crackle work? Each of up to X targets, so I can still just target my opponent if needed. I guess we cannot quite hit the Motherlode because our land is colorless. But if Windfall finds a differently colored land, we're good. So let's maybe start there, discarding the Frenzy given the Sterling Grove. Although I suppose we can still hit Hei Bai since that one's not an enchantment. But I think we still prefer Crackle and everything else. Okay, Mizzix's Mastery can flash back, hit the Motherlode. Did not find a red source, however. So wouldn't be able to cast Hit the Motherlode right now. So instead, maybe just play Electro. And attack for 2. And then next turn we can go off with Reckless Charge on the Scarlet Witch to set up Hit the Motherlode, maybe a big Crackle with power. Opponent sadly has an answer to the Scarlet Witch. And a Spirit Oasis. Alright, so we'll have to do it in hard mode. Ashling can be a discard outlet for Hit the Motherlode to Mizzix's Mastery it back. So yeah, that could be the play, just go Ashling into Reckless Charge, discard, Hit the Motherlode. Find a Season of the Bold, that's a good one. So we're attacking for 9. And then the red mana is going to be stored up thanks to Electro. They do now have a ton of mana to work with. And a Day of Judgment to wipe the board. At least means I'll have access to the Scarlet Witch once again. And I may as well deal 1 damage here. And the Cleansing Fire can gain them life. Opponent is at 9. But yeah, I'm not going to be able to Crackle for enough to win the game here. Can at most deal 5 damage. So then, what's our plan? Might still be to redeploy the Scarlet Witch and hope to untap with her for a turn, even though Sterling Grove can be guaranteed to find an answer. They did lose their mana, so they don't quite have infinite mana to work with anymore. Or we can just Mizzix's Mastery, hit the Motherlode, which may be better. And that'll make some treasure, which can then maybe set up Scarlet Witch plus additional spells in the same turn. Alright, Thor's not a bad hit. So that could now exile the Reckless Charge, so I can cast it for 1 mana. And that's also 1 damage from Thor. So this could just be lethal on the spot. Alright, so we didn't get there with our commander, but we got there another way. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Fire Lord Azula, definitely a must-answer commander. And at 4 toughness, Chain Lightning is not quite gonna suffice. So this hand's a little clunky. This is better. Do expect him to have quite a bit of creature removal, and the Leyline of Anticipation's nice in that deck, as I can now play all their spells at instant speed, which is great for enabling the copy effect on Firelord Azula. Also makes it harder to predict what they'll do next. So yeah, if you have it in your opening hand, this card's great. So can play Burgi, and then maybe next turn Scarlet Witch. Not going to be able to attack since they could have any number of creatures that they can flash in to block. And the Steamkin's quite valuable if we can keep it alive. Alright, it's going to be a Lightning Greaves at instant speed. So yeah, they could do some damage with Azula. So let's see. I can play the Scarlet Witch, make a mana with Burgi, and then still cast a Windfall. And then the Steamkin could also generate additional mana. So for now I'll discard a Mountain. Okay, Crescendo can pump Scarlet Witch. So we are kind of doing it here. Exile the Mountain. So the Explosive Welcome is an instant. I can flash back the Windfall, which may be worth it. Or I can try to flash back the Welcome. So yeah, let's flash back the Windfall. Opponent has a response, an offer you can't refuse. Okay, that'll give me some treasure. Do I have the mana to cast a Welcome in the opponent's turn? Because the Scarlet Witch is going to shrink down again. So then I'll only have a 2-powered Scarlet Witch discounting a 9 mana card. So then I'll be a little bit short of casting this to answer Azula. So then do I cast it now? I think I do. This mana does not go away right away, so I can first attack. Maybe they flash in a creature to block. Tiny Bones, perfect. So then now I can Explosive Welcome 5 to my opponent, 3 to Tiny Bones, while growing the Steamkin some more. Hit you for 7. And hope that Azula isn't too punishing here. My hand's not very good. And they're not gonna flash in Azula just yet. Season of the Bolt was a great top deck. Question is whether we use the mana from Steamkin before casting Season. Can exalt the top 4 and make a treasure. Would probably be the move here. Yeah, there's a good chance we can get 3 more counters on the Steamkin. They could also have another counter spell. Consult is going to go digging, so then they do not have the mana for Azula. End of turn. And we found, wow, that's all action, and certainly a bunch of cards we can cast here. So where do we begin? If I go for Vision and Scarlet Witch, we generate more mana. And then Thor can go for Flashback, which will then generate even more mana. Cast a Flashback. Question is whether we want to play the Talent first. I think we wait and then make mana with Steamkin. Flashback on probably just a season again. Oh yeah, we're going off. Deal 1 to my opponents, cast a season, deal another 5 with Thor, make a bunch more mana, likely still end up playing Chandra this turn. And there we go, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Neyith, so a red-green fight deck. Our hand is missing land number 3, and then we could be off to an explosive start. Got both Jessica's Will and Seething Song. And there's my land. But yeah, if they can maybe remove Scarlet Witch before we untap with her, we could still be in a bit of trouble. And yeah, at the very least, they can force me to block if they play their commander next turn. So going for Scarlet Witch and hoping for the best is probably not the plan. May have to just cast a Frenzy first. Alright, opponent's got a Silverback Elder for starters. Can blow up artifacts and enchantments as well. But have to imagine that our opponent's packing a few fight spells. So then again, if I tap out for Scarlet Witch, is not gonna end well for me. But the Frenzy's not enough to take out the Elder. So between a rock and a hard place. If I Seething Song, I can play Scarlet Witch and then still cast a 2-mana Big Score, which will basically replace itself. And then maybe from there I can still make something happen, but that seems kind of weak. I guess it would mean that I at least have 2 treasures to help me recast the Scarlet Witch next turn, so maybe that's still worth it. Just go Seething Song, Scarlet Witch, Big Score. And then hope they don't remove my commander, but if they do, we can still redeploy her next turn. Schemes would make a red, not enough to immediately recast the Big Score. So yeah, we'll pass. But we're certainly well set up to do some damage next turn, if Scarlet Witch survives. They're gonna go after the treasure. Fair enough. So then I could still Witchstalker Frenzy on their commander. Make use of that floating mana while we can. Since it didn't seem like they had a fight spell in hand necessarily. Okay, and now a Bramble Familiar. There's no treasures left to destroy, so a Silverback can put a land in play. Take 5. Alright, this is a turn where we need to make it happen. So can play a library. Start out with a haste magic, which finds a Mind Collapse, which I can cast for 1 mana. Okay, so we have options. So if I schemes back the Big Score, I'll still be able to hit the Motherlode here, since we get 2 mana back. And then probably ditch the land. Can also flash back the schemes, get back the Big Score once again, so I can cast more spells this turn. Jessica's Will only makes 2 mana, so currently loses me 1. Yeah, let's flash this back, get the Big Score. Cast it. Alright, find Thor and a Crescendo. But now I think it's time to hit the Motherlode, see what we find. And then I can still maybe Mind Collapse, either sacking a land or sacking a treasure, since the Elder's maybe gonna blow those up. Sazakab's Brew can increase the Witch's power even more, but we're not making use of the discount at this point. So I'll just discard and draw with it. And then maybe a mountain can still go. We do get 8 treasures, so I guess the silverback's gonna have a hard time keeping up with that. And yeah, we'll Mind Collapse, taking out the Bramble Familiar. Alright, so still a pretty good turn. Get to attack for 5. And then next turn, we've got some exciting options with a Reverberation. Thor can maybe get back, hit the Mother Load. Voracious Hydra is going to fight the Scarlet Witch. So, treasure down. 5 mana to redeploy, probably still worth it. We'll have to do some math. Alright, a land is useful. So play Scarlet Witch, have 7 mana left. And then I can cast potentially both bump spells, although Crescendo might suffice. So then 5 mana remains. Really want a Reverberation and then hit the Mother Load with that, potentially. Or we can maybe clean up with a big Shadowskull Smashing if I don't play it as a land. But yeah, start with Scarlet Witch. If I Crescendo, I can maybe still exile a land. Which I did. Okay, so then I can cast Smashing for 7. Taking out both of the opponent's large creatures. I think I still Reckless Charge, since we can always flash it back later. So then this will only cost me 2 treasures. And then we'll save the Reverberation for next turn. And hit for 8. A Brash Taunter, indestructible, do not want to deal damage to it. So that could be a bit of a roadblock. And get to untap. And a Mascot Exhibition is a good one. So Jessica's Will does not generate mana. If I go for Thor, I could still get a big score back. So I'm a bit limited in how much mana I have. Reverberation into Mascot Exhibition, to be fair, is also a valid play. So that might be the move here. Yeah, if I Reckless Charge, I discount Exhibition by 3 more. So then it only costs me 2 mana. So then I can still Reverberation plus Exhibition. But it's not like I'm really attacking into the Brash Taunter here. So we can keep it in the graveyard for now. Yeah, because either way I would still end up using both treasures. So we get a whole bunch of mascots. No point in attacking. And then hopefully next turn we can attack for the win. They could force a block and attack with a Taunter. But yeah, it doesn't seem all that useful. But now an all-out attack should suffice. Opponent can also fight another creature, maybe one of the flyers. But we should still have enough damage coming across. But just in case, I could always play Thor. And then hit a Reckless Charge with Thor. So I can also give it haste and attack for the win. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Raph and Mikey, Troublemakers. Definitely one of our worst matchups, since our interaction is not instant speed, capable of dealing 7 damage. And they can often win before we manage to set up. So definitely need a faster hand. Pyretic Ritual for Scarlet Witch is a start. So we can hope that this one is fast enough. We've got the Windfall, which is mana neutral with the Scarlet Witch in play. Don't think I'll need Shatterskull Smashing as a spell. Explosive Welcome is almost good enough at instant speed to deal with Raph and Mikey, but not quite. And our opponent getting lucky with the Gemstone Caverns. They did take a couple mulligans, so they are down to 3 cards in hand, now 4. But yeah, if they've got the right ramp cards, it doesn't matter. So then a ritual for Scarlet Witch. Hope they do not have an answer. I wouldn't expect them to. And then the treasures can maybe ramp out, hit the Mother Load soon. And a big score as well. So start with the Windfall, discarding probably the Explosive Welcome at this point. Could still see Ashling being more useful. And then I can still big score, ditching a mountain. Alright, Redirect Lightning could have its applications as well. So turn 4 we can hit the Mother Load, and hopefully still get a turn after. There's going to be an Ironcrack feat, no, and Open the Way. So yeah, they likely get to cast Raph and Mikey next turn. What's my course of action? I think it's still to hit the Mother Load, hope to hit something exciting, but at least we'll be left with a bunch of treasure that we can then put to use. Alright, just a Ruby Medallion. So I've got all the mana I need. Can use Ashling to maybe discard and draw into more relevant spells. So opponent's got the mana for Raph and Mikey. There's no redirecting the attack trigger. And a Terror of Mount Velas is just game over here. Or not quite, I fall to 1. So yeah, I don't think we have any outs here, since we did not draw a spell we can cast to trigger Ashling. Because I cannot put Redirect Lightning on the stack. So yeah, that's game over, sadly. I guess there's a world where my opponent still puts something on the stack. I get to redirect, find an instant that can somehow deal 5 to the Terror. So it's not entirely impossible, but I wouldn't keep my hopes up. So then does Scarlet Witch want to attack? Maybe I need the toughness back. And a Gnawbone is gonna just fly over here. Alright, I mean, this game went pretty much as expected. But we had a little bit of hope for a second there. Maybe holding the Explosive Welcome would have worked out a bit better, since it could have answered the Terror, given us a redraw with Ashling. But didn't necessarily know what we were going to draw here. Alright, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing a Super-Skrull, so a 5-color deck. We have a keepable hand. Turn to Steamkin. Probably gonna wait a little bit longer on the Hex Magic. Although I don't have high hopes for the Scarlet Witch surviving. Mascot Exhibition, under the right circumstances, can be cast for free. Will require a couple pump spells. Okay, go for Scarlet Witch. Attack for 2. And we could see a removal spell here. Yeah, I get lost. Still wanted to cast it first main phase so we could grow the Steamkin. And now Glissa, that one's pretty scary. Can remove counters from my Steamkin potentially. So that can interfere, and it can also destroy my double vision. So can't think of many worse cards for me to face in this spot. Well, I guess we'll still Hex Magic. And then I get to play a land from exile, next turn play another one. And maybe find something useful. Titan Strength would let me make mana with the Steamkin, but we did not find any removal spells. So, yeah, I guess we just use the map. Go exploring. And no attacks. So curious to see what they decide to do with Glissa. They are very far from casting the Super-Skrull with only one black source. Opponent will just draw a card. And a Tear Asunder for the Steamkin. So no real point in playing the double vision from exile. Can replay the Scarlet Witch. Or we could Smashing just to deal with Glissa. I think I try Scarlet Witch first. It's fine if they draw one more card, but if I get to untap with the Scarlet Witch, I can do some serious damage with a Capstone as well. No blocks. Opponent down to 14 from all their shock lanes. And an Ice Still Explorer with a fetch. Hoping they don't have enough mana to cast another removal spell. Now they can get more black for Super-Skrull. Gonna be a tap Portico, so still not going after black mana. Maybe they don't have any intentions of casting Super-Skrull and it's just there as a mascot. Alright, they did find a swamp. And I get to untap, so yeah, we get to have some fun. Think we start with Titan Strength. Seething Song can make even more mana. Yeah, that could be fine. So then, kind of liking Reverberation into hit the Mother Load. And then with the Seething Song, we know that we'll be able to still cast a Capstone. Ancestral Anger. And a Chandra. That's more like it. And how about a Immolating Gyre to wipe their board? Oh yes. Play the Capstone. Hitting big score. And a Season of the Bolt can keep it going. Let's see. Still seems like our best option. Exile Treasure. Okay, and then I could still Windfall. And yeah, our opponent has seen enough. Unless they have a way to destroy all those treasures, next turn we get to untap. Chandra can keep digging, can level up the talent all the way, and before you know it, we'll have found some burn spells to close out the game. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Ashling, Rekindled, blue-red. My hand is a bit light on mana, unfortunately. Although if we do get to Scarlet Witch, pump it up with Titan Strength, then a Capstone is certainly within reach. So maybe I should still try it. And Dawning Archaic is probably not gonna be all that great here. Turn to Ashling. Could always Strength on Ashling just for the Scry 1. Or Crescendo for exiling the top card. Yeah, maybe that's worth it. Explosive Welcome and a lane, so I guess we're getting paid off for casting the Crescendo. Now the question is, does the Scarlet Witch survive? Okay, opponent with a long shot to deal 2 whenever they cast a non-creature spell. But now I like the upkeep, Titan Strength, to scry into a land, and then we can still cast a Capstone, and even cast Sorcerer's Schemes. Alright, Mascot Exhibition is not a bad hit. And then Schemes, get back probably the Titan Strength. If I go for Exhibition, I will not have the mana to cast it, since I'll get 1 red, so I'll be 1 short. Whereas Titan Strength can maybe set up the Apex of Power in the future. And I guess we can flash it back now too. So I guess I can still Exhibition again if I really want. Yeah, that's probably worth it. Pirate's Pillage seems great. And then Exhibition. Alright, and hit you for 8. So we went from potentially missing our 3rd land drop to casting double Mascot Exhibition and still having a Capstone with Paradigm here. We'll see what they can come up with. Something like a River's Rebuke here would be quite effective. Scarlet Witch is gonna get copied. Could also be very nice on their side of the battlefield. And yeah, they've got their own big score. So they could technically still rebuke me. Zuko's Exile. The Witch is gone. Back to the command zone. So yeah, hopefully the Capstone can carry us. Find Jessica's Will and Medallion, those are both pretty decent. So I get to make 3 mana. So the Scarlet Witch is back. Pillage. Do I hang on to the Apex of Power, or do I hang on to the Dawning Archaic? I mean, if I discard the Apex and maybe cast Archaic, I can still choose to cast the Apex from the graveyard, but then I guess we don't get to 10 mana. Let's dream big. Okay, Artist's Talents I can play and level up. And then the 4/4s and 3/2s can attack. The 2/1 gets blocked by the reach creature. Could also leave more on defense if we're worried. But I also want to press my advantage here. Opponent trades away the copy of Scarlet Witch. Falls to 6. And Cyclonic Rift, yeah, I was about to say, maybe I should have just sacked the clue token instead of leveling up. Because now we do get punished. So yeah, opponent's still very much in this game. But the Paradigm can maybe still save me. Alright, Artist is not a bad hit. Although I do not have any way to trigger it right this second. So then we just go Medallion, Witch, Talent. And hope to hang on for another turn. Either way, this has been a very eventful game. And now a Splatter technique to draw 4 cards. I'm down to 9 in the meantime from this long shot. And a Brawl's Expertise once again bouncing my board. So am I dead yet? Taking 4, so almost. And a Roaming Throne. So if they still have a spell to cast to trigger a long shot, they could have maybe triggered it twice. So a talent, what do we discard? So there's no world where we cast the Apex of Power here, is there? I don't think so, unless... Yeah, even if I hit a pump spell with a capstone, Scarlet Witch is not on the battlefield yet. So then I think we discard it and keep digging. Ooh, Valakut would almost be good, and a bombardment. Sadly, I do not have a way to trigger the bombardment right now. So if I play Valakut, I'm not going to be able to get any additional mountains into play, and the game's going to be decided next turn. So I need to discard the Valakut, keep the untapped land here, I believe. And the Medallion can still trigger the talent at least to give me a redraw. Alright, found a Season of the Bold. So that will trigger the bombardment. And then whenever I cast a spell, Season deals 2 damage to up to 1 target creature. So it does not deal damage to my opponent directly, unfortunately, but can maybe finish off long shots. So this will be a long shot. Let's see, do I start with Ruby Medallion? Don't think I have time for the Artist. So I'll start here. And discard Artist. Finds the Might, which can deal 4 to my opponent. We're getting so close. So Scarlet Witch pays for the Might. And then we get to trigger Bombardment. Or I can Season first. And then I guess we choose these 2 modes. And then I need to keep both if I want to cast a Might. But I might exile a land to still cast it here. But if I don't, it would be kind of embarrassing. But yeah, what am I hoping to hit with a bombardment? Maybe like a Pirate's Pillage. Yeah, I guess I don't have any cards left in hand to discard then. So maybe I do have to discard the Mountain and hope to exile one or draw one. Okay, so then now I can play Mountain from exile, cast a Might, target my opponents, trigger the Season, which sadly doesn't go face, but can deal 2 to long shots. Discard the Mountain. And I guess never mind, the Bombardment does not trigger since I've already cast my first instant or sorcery. And yeah, Might is a sorcery, so would not have been able to trigger this in the opponent's turn. Alright, that's too bad. So very close one here, opponent all the way down to 2 life. Yeah, maybe should have just gone with exiling the top 4 instead. And then there's a chance I still find something useful to cast. Yeah, I was thinking we could still get a bombardment trigger, but it retroactively checks for instants and sorceries that have been cast. And then now we're very dead. Well, we had an incredible start, but our opponent had the right answers here with the Cyclonic Rift, the expertise, and sadly never got to cast our Apex of Power. And a Lightning Bolt will close it out. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have Pump Spell and then a Volcanic Torrent, which could be an effective sweeper against a green landfall deck. So, yeah, I'll try it. A Library on the play, a little bit worse than on the draw, but can still draw me a card on turn 2 when I wouldn't be doing anything else. And then I don't expect too much removal where they would answer the Scarlet Witch. So play Library and pass. And then I'll have to main phase draw and then play my land. But next turn I probably want to tap out for Scarlet Witch. Fanatic of Ronas is a good one. So let's see, if I go for Haste Magic next turn into Volcanic Torrent, then I'll have cast 3 spells total, so that's still only 3 damage. So may have to wait another turn. Raphalos is a good one too. 2 forests on the battlefield. A mountain the draw. So if I play a land, I can still activate Library, or I could see what the Haste Magic reveals. Don't think I'm Hex Magicking here. So yeah, we have some options. A Library versus just Haste Magic. Hope to exile a red spell I can cast for 1 mana. And then the Torrent would also deal with the Fanatic. Of course, there's always a chance that Torrent hits another removal spell. So this may be worth it. Ooh, perfect. Chain Lightning. So then we can Chain Lightning Fanatic and Torrent to clean up. Unless they have a protection spell in hand. Medallion I'll take. So nice one-sided board wipe. Hit you for 5. And then Goggles to maybe copy a Hex Magic could be fun. Put on now with a Harrow. So they have a land to get back with Titania. Alright, Strike It Rich copied by Goggles is actually a decent play. So I can do that now. I could still Hex Magic. I think we wait, so I'll have more cards in hand. And then I can copy the Hex Magic with the Goggles. Opponent makes a 4/4 Fanatic. Witchstalker Frenzy could be an answer, but I will first cast the Hex Magic. So then a bunch of cards will get exiled. And that's a lot of value. So where do I want to begin? Play Steamkin. Possible I can just win the game here. Might be a little ambitious. Say no to the mountain. A big score, discard mountain. And then how much mana do we have total? Crackle can certainly deal with the Fanatic. So let's see, I have 4, 5, 6, plus 5 is 11 total. So X equals 3. Could have also first cast a Frenzy, get more counters on the Steamkin, make a little bit more mana, but an attack here will do it. Well, that was a pretty exciting game. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Stenn, Paranoid Partisan. Interested to see which card type they name. I would expect Artifact, but you never know. This hand seems keepable. Gonna actually keep the Regency to use the Adventure first. And then turn to Signet, Scarlet Witch. Can be pumped by Wild Ride to discount our spells even more. So then we're just looking for some payoff to cast with all that extra mana. It's gonna be Shuri, so yeah, definitely an artifact deck. Can now play Scarlet Witch with a Redirect Lightning for protection. And I'll wait on the Mind Collapse, don't really want to sacrifice my mountain here. Alright, opponent had a Stroke of Midnight, so how about no? And a Haste Magic is a decent starting point. So, Haste Magic, see what we exile. Just a mountain. Alright, so then I'll just attack for 5. So, yeah, decent start. Had the counter to the Stroke of Midnight, but not really leveraging the fact that the Scarlet Witch is still alive. Can make a wizard end of turn. And now a 2-mana File. Could take out Stenn in response, so they do not get to play another artifact with a discount. Yeah, that may be worth it. And there we go, Apex of Power, that's what I'm talking about. Can I cast it? Should be able to. Since I get to discount it by 3 more. So then I'll have 5 mana left, which is exactly enough. Exile the top 7, make 10 mana. And how do we want to proceed from here? Go for Ashling. And then let's see, it's discard a card, then draw. So I can still maybe use the Regency first to make a wizard. So I get to draw for free. And then cycle the Anger. And a Hex Magic isn't bad. So then now I'll get 4 mana after casting the bolts. Discard Mountain. Draw another. And then we still have enough mana for Artist's Talent. And I could even Hex Magic here if I really want, or I can wait to take my draw step first and just level this up for now. Wild Ride is also an option, but I don't think that's what I want to do here. Well, that was a good turn. Bonus down to 11. And oof, farewell. Yeah, that card is always something. So now I'm just down to a Hex Magic in hand. Yeah, this card was brutal. I guess I just redeploy Scarlet Witch, keep the lands in hand to make the Hex Magic more exciting, and play the Regency. At least they also lost their File, so a small victory. Familiar to discount their historic spells by 1. Alright, we'll kick things off with a Hex Magic, can always cast a Ritual afterwards. And a Chandra's not bad. So Ritual does not quite cast Chandra here, so we can save it for next turn. Still get to play another Mountain from exile. Ugin, that's a good one too. Probably destroying Scarlet Witch. Opponent is at 9, so doesn't take much for Chandra to cross the finish line. And a Sorceress Schemes. There's only Hex Magic, since they also exile the graveyard, of course, with a Farewell, because why not? So I can Chandra, copy the Ritual, and then cast a Hex Magic. And then Chandra probably wants to just deal with their board. So let's see. Play Chandra. Cast Ritual. I'll get 6 mana. Schemes +1, so that's just enough for the Hex Magic.
We have to win this fight. Here's a spark of hope.
Schemes back the magic. And cast it, and then depending on what we draw, I'll decide if I want to use Chandra to clean up the board, or maybe to make mana and copy another spell, maybe even an instant in the opponent's turn, but it looks like that was not necessary. So yeah, we get to see this Scarlet Witch Brawl deck in action, And the high highs are certainly there when you get to resolve your witch, keep it in play, and then start pumping it up to discount your spells. But it also has some low lows, because if your commander does get removed, because we're not playing a ton of cheap ramp cards, it can be a bit difficult to redeploy. So compared to some of the other red legendary creatures in the deck, the Scarlet Witch may not be the most consistent one, but if things line up, it can be a ton of fun. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.